Welcome back, everybody, to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I am, of course, Josh Williams.
I'm Vengeance. No, I'm Ryan Murphy.
And I'm James Sheridan.
You're too small to be Vengeance. I'm sorry, man. I mean, even
what? Robert Pattinson's not.
He had a little more muscle tone, just a little bit.
Michael Keaton's not.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us here. And you saw the title, you clicked on the video. We're here to give you our spoiler heavy, and we are giving you your warning now. Spoiler heavy review of The Batman 2022. Now, Ryan, who directed this and who's all in it?
Well, The Batman, I'm glad you asked. The Batman was directed by Matt Reeves, written by Matt Reeves and Peter Craig, and stars Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell, Andy Serkis, John Turturro, and Peter Sarsgaard. Did I miss anyone? That's who I know is in the film.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everyone.
It has a musical score by Michael Giacchino, which I'm sure we'll be disagreeing on.
There's one person I think you missed, but I don't think he's on the cast list.
Barry Keoghan?
Yeah.
As the Joker. Yep.
We'll
talk about that. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. That's your first real spoiler there. If you like I said, you got your warning, so that's your problem if you're here. But before we get into this review, guys, we want to let you know that this review is sponsored by B&B Missouri 6 Theaters. Now we're gonna take a brief timeout promoting them, and we'll jump right back into the review. We'll be right back. B&B Missouri 6 is the premier theater to see a movie if you're in the Missouri area. The refreshments are delicious, the seats give you full reclining comfort, and the movie viewing experience is euphoric. But the main reason I wanted B&B to be my sponsor is their staff and the overall movie-going experience they provide. They're professional, friendly, inviting, and they truly have you leaving the theater feeling, as their motto goes, the magic of the movies. Thank you guys so much for indulging us there. We have to give a shout out to the sponsor because they help at least me, not these guys, but they sponsor me where I'm at to help get me these reviews out to you guys in a timely fashion.
They let them in the theater for free. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Exactly. So I go see them early so I can get the review up. But anyway,
I got my Two-Face coin here. I just he's not in the film, but
now you also may be wondering. I said I get them out early. I was going to do my own review, but I really needed to watch it again just to really sink my teeth and analyze it a bit more to see how I felt about it, where I want to rank it, all those other things, and really just kind of digest it a little bit more. Because we can all three agree there's a lot here. This movie is damn near 3 hours. There's a lot of story. There's a lot of small things. There's a lot of subtext within a lot of scenes and characters. It's a lot to sink your teeth into. So I want to I've been really curious what you guys
well, let's go with you and James, because that's usually how we do it. Because you and James give your glowing reviews of everything. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And then you come to me and you're like, oh my God, is he gonna like it? Is this gonna be the one? Is this gonna be the film that he likes finally?
Well, we'll start off with James then, because
I have a history of not liking many of the DC films. So
okay.
Yeah, so let's gonna start with James. By the way, if any of you guys have been watching us for a while, James must have got some kind of a green screen or a blue screen. Actually, blue screen's better. If nobody knows, don't get a green screen. So you get that glow, that green glow around your edges if you know how to clean that up. But you look like you got a blue screen, which looks really nice.
Nope, it's a green.
Oh, it's a green screen. Okay, cool. Well, good job on you. You must be using some kind of ultra key because that looks really nice. I don't see the edges at all.
OBS is really good about pulling that stuff out. But
yep. But anyway, James, in your Bat Cave, what did you think of the Batman?
So I have a complicated history with Batman, as I do with a lot of things. Because there's an iteration of Batman that I really love, and I never get to see it on film.
Adam West? No, you already saw him on film.
And of course, we've had a lot of interpretations of Batman over the years, and a lot of different takes on the character specifically. This might be the closest I'm ever going to get to the Batman I want.
Never or is
because
okay, good. Okay.
One of the things that I've always had an issue with is that there's not a lot of detective work in Batman films.
Yeah.
And him being, the world's greatest detective, he's supposed to be known for his ability to actually solve crimes and look into things and, go to crime scenes and investigate things, look for clues. And with a, villain like the Riddler, especially the way they play the Riddler in this film, this is, probably as close to like a true detective Batman film as I'm ever going to get.
The closest we've ever gotten was The Dark Knight. That's the closest.
And even The Dark Knight, it was like one or two scenes that like he did some forensics on some bullet. But most of the time it's like just beat him up and like sort of like the the posturing and the like hiding in shadows and all that stuff kind of character. This one was super, super grounded. Like to the point of it almost being painful at times. Like you could feel like the bones breaking kind of thing, the viscera of the performance. But like back to my point, I loved so much that this was about him being a detective. Like he's a hero too, but like it's about the process of trying to solve these riddles, solve these crimes, figure out the story, figure out the puzzles, figure out how it all connects. And him, spoilers, inevitably failing to do that properly and being, sort of caught off guard by an absolute lunatic of a character. The way they played Riddler was
way different.
It's not Riddler in like a traditional sense, but it's the Riddler that I've always kind of wanted.
No bowler hat, right? No bowler hat. No.
The costume doesn't matter to me, but he's not as like sort of shticky, kind of like Riddler tends to be sort of like Joker light and sort of like, played for laughs and whatnot. It's like, if you really boil Riddler down to his essence, he is it's about the puzzles. It's about sort of like the his mind manipulation, the mind games, that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what we got. And of course, you dive even further into the way they depict his crimes. Like, they've stolen so much from the Zodiac story, and I love Zodiac specifically because of the way he like presents his clues, and him being in the media and all that stuff, and like because Zodiac was an actual real world killer. There, like I have a, it's no secret that I have sort of a history of like fascination with true crime, and Zodiac is one of those ones that just keeps coming up, and I'm fascinated by sort of the lore and history of that, to the point where like it feels almost fictional, but it actually happened kind of thing. So seeing them draw on that stuff made me like the inner sort of true crime geek just was buzzing the entire film, and watching them go through his apartment and pulling out all the traps, and like there's little bits of like Saw in there too, and like some of the like contraptions that he used was a little bit like Jigsaw.
Those traps
and actually
cool.
there was a one that was very similar to an actual real life crime. If you've ever seen there's a Netflix documentary about what they call the pizza bomber, where this guy had this contraption around his neck that was set to go off, and he was forced to go and rob a bank, and he had to stand out with the police, and eventually the people who put it on him just set it off and just exploded his head, which was a plot point in this as well. So like it was like hitting all the right bells and whistles and whatnot, and the look of it was amazing. It's appropriately dark for the subject matter. It's the one thing I can kind of hit it for is the length, but it's also it's like, I don't know how you make this movie shorter. I think the length is necessary, but you do feel how long this movie is, and I don't know that there's any way to kind of fix that necessarily.
What's your score out of 10?
And I'm delaying because I'm waffling on what to give it, because I'm hesitant to give any movie a perfect score. So I think I have to give this one a 9.5, because this was this is the Batman movie I've waited for a long time, and it hit me in all the right places. I know Ryan has an issue with the score, but I love that it was this like I love that it was this like funeral dirge and this sort of like gothic, just like painful, just every time you heard it, you felt Bruce Wayne suffering. And like Colin Farrell just completely disappears in the role. You wouldn't even recognize him if you didn't know he was playing.
It's funny. Oswald. Some of the people I saw it with at the end, they were like, "Man, who played the Penguin? Because that was so good." I'm like, "Oh, it's Colin Farrell." Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the suit, the pig makeup and prosthetics and the voice. It doesn't even sound like him.
The voice, the accent, the personality. Like, Colin Farrell almost always sounds like Colin Farrell. No matter what role he's in, he still sounds like Colin Farrell. he completely disappears.
Which means there's hope for Chris Pratt and Charlie Day playing Mario and Luigi.
So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.5. This was everything I wanted it to be. Little quibbles here and there.
We'll talk about it.
I'm very disappointed by the relationship between Bruce and Alfred, because it's one of my favorite relationships in the comics and in movies, and it's such an important sort of like ongoing relationship to like center Bruce. And I don't like the way he kind of treats Alfred in this, and I don't feel like he ever really learns his lesson. He kind of does, but like I'm not satisfied with the resolution of it, because unfortunately, like Andy Serkis like disappears halfway through this movie and just never comes back, and it's like, okay.
Well, in that moment, I kind of how the story is. I get what you're saying, and we'll talk about some more. I have my thoughts on that one.
Let's go with your score out of 10, Josh, and your thoughts on the film.
With me, after watching a few more times, I'm giving it a solid, real strong 9 out of 10.
Wow.
I really like this movie. The length is there, but it's funny. The length is there, but you don't really feel it till about, I would say, towards the end of the second into the third act. That's where it drags a little for me. There's a couple scenes you could have cut out, like the scene where he talks to Carmine Falcone after Bruce Wayne talks to Carmine Falcone, and he goes back and he opens that room and it ends up being his parents' room. He kind of sits there for a little bit. That took I'd say about 2 or 3 minutes. That could have easily been cut and just have him sitting there next to Alfred because it's supposed to convey that he's really upset about what happened. He's just kind of like, I can't believe my parents, my father did this kind of thing, which you could have done that just by having him there, like by his bedside for like 20 seconds, and Alfred shows up and they have their conversation that they had. I mean, like I said, it's so hard to dwindle it down to even less than what it was. I mean, but when you take out the credits, it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. So, I mean, and that's one of the things I like about Matt Reeves. And that's one of the reasons I'm giving it praise. Ryan, he made fun of me earlier in our group chat. I don't know if you saw that, James, but he's like, Josh always pretty much like trips over his dick about Matt Reeves in his last couple movies. And it's true, but because I love Matt Reeves because he focuses so much on the characters as well, and the story is almost secondary. I mean, the story is almost what drives, but it's the characters that drive the story along, not necessarily the story that drives the characters. And he does it so well. And there's always so much subtext and visuals to it than just talking. I would love so much about it. And with that, you need time, time to flesh them out and time to get you to a resolution. And I loved, I will say this, since it's not technically the opening scene of the movie, to me, the opening scene of Batman, I know we don't like to be hyperbolic when new movies come out because it's can sometimes roll people's eyes. But after watching a second time, because I wanted to make sure I thought clearly about this, is that to me is probably my favorite opening scene of Batman.
Oh, for the love of God.
Introducing himself than I've ever seen.
Are you serious? Like, you're really going to top it over
why.
like
Here's why.
The coming down of the rafters in the original Batman film, like the original debut of Batman, because he comes out and, I mean, okay. Well,
here's why. Here's why I do. This is the first time I ever felt the fear of the people in Gotham. Like before, it was always like Batman Begins, for instance, or even in the original Batman, like the people are being like, acting. It's more like they're acting like they're afraid than actually feeling it. And that can also go into the direction. It's not again. We're not dissing on the original Batman or the Batman Begins or Dark Knight. That's not what this is. I'm just saying there is other things I didn't like about this movie. There is, but I'm just saying one of the things I praise about it is that feeling, like this opening scene, like the slowness of the score, how the editing drags out. Like it's the point, like it's not, I like how they used the signal in the sky. Usually before, the signal in the sky was just a signal, hey, Batman, you need to meet, Commissioner Gordon or whatever to talk over what's going on. They use it here.
Nope.
Hang on.
No, it's not true. You're going to say that this is the first time they've used it and said it's a symbol, not just it's a warning, not just a signal. Like they talk about that in The Dark Knight. It's not the first. Like, I like reminding everyone that he's out there, even if he doesn't come. Like that was in The Dark Knight. So don't say that this is the first time they've done it here.
All right, well, fair enough there. But for this one, like every time it was kind of great how these criminals that were like robbing things and doing looting and whatnot, they would look up at the sky. All of a sudden they would look at the shadow. And like, to me, that was, and then when he zooms in on the shadows and you just see the terror in their eyes. Like, even though he may not be there, it's the shadows that they're afraid of, not necessarily him. Well, I mean, they're afraid of him, but just how that works. And then even for me, like when he finally shows up when they're, against that mob of that group of guys, and he just kind of waltzes in like he's the fucking Terminator. And like before, you would do like, and it's all about aesthetic, what you're liking. Like some people love that opening scene of Batman and Batman Begins, where he's kind of doing what Batman does. He swoops down and takes them off and all that stuff.
Wow.
But for me, just aesthetically, like it was that fear in their eyes when they realized who he was that really just resonated with me with so much. Like you were like, I don't know, you felt the fear more. And I loved that scene. So that whole montage of scenes so much. And it really, and I don't know, that's me. People can disagree with me. That's fine. But to me, it's my best or my favorite opening scene of a Batman. You know what I mean? Like when you're introducing the Batman in their movie. But that's me. Hey, I know Ryan's going to disagree. That's fine. And again, along with that opening scene, that score really just works. And the reason I love this score so much, and I'm not going to say it's my favorite of all the Batman, but I love it. And here's why. A lot of iconic scores, not just of Batman, but of any score, their simplicity is what really resonates with you. Like when you think of dun-dum, dun-dum, it's so simple, but yet it when it falls. Like I feel like this score people will remember along with this trilogy, just how simple those 4 notes are. And it really works, especially with the tone of the movie. Another thing we got to praise, and there's no argument anymore. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's fucking Twilight being Batman. He is so fucking good as Batman and Bruce Wayne. There's no argument now. I mean, it works. He did so well and it's mostly, you only really see Bruce Wayne, 3 or 4 times, I think. And he just in the bat suit, and that it does so well. And the suit, to me, I don't know about you guys, but I love the suit. The suits. And I think that's what also helps add into the terror of the character, because like he just walks through bullets, and if you see a guy doing that, especially if you're a crime villain, it's gonna scare you even more, because you're like, oh shit, this guy's just unstoppable. And so much more to like. Paul Dano as Riddler, we'll get into more. I kind of want to explore that so much. But a lot of the things I really loved too about the movie was its subtext, its social commentaries of what they tackle in the movie as far as what the story is focused on, kind of how you take fringe groups and fringe people and they, use the internet, become sort of organized. And I saw some people online kind of criticizing it because it's taking the subject matters of today and putting it in a movie where you shouldn't, because people want movies to escape to. But
movies are
the Dark Knight trilogy did, the Dark Knight trilogy, especially Batman Begins and the Dark Knight, did that. They were in a post 9/11 and Patriot Act time. They used that sense of security through the internet and your privacy and all that stuff. They really tackle those social commentaries. So I didn't have a problem with that whatsoever. I actually think it was really well accomplished in how they handled that, especially with the Riddler. But we'll go on some more stuff we may or may not like, and I'm sure Ryan may have some questions and James may have some stuff too. But Ryan, at least, come on.
I was just looking at the fear in your eyes right now. I'm going to give this movie a 5.5 out of 10.
We here, folks. I don't think there's going to be any movie that's going to really work well with like Ryan's.
I
thought this was the one. I thought this would be the one.
I did too. I really did. I don't understand.
God.
Wait, hey,
Ryan always likes very colorful, like.
We didn't review it. But
Okay,
I like Death on the Nile recently. I would have given that a 7 out of 10, even though as an adaptation of the book, it's hogwash. But just judging it as a movie on its own, it's a pretty decent movie. So I went to go see Death on the Nile. I gave it a 7 out of 10. You missed it. We didn't review it. So there you go. It's your fault.
You still might review it. I watched it. So we can still review it. But anyway.
Watching this movie, you guys know, like for me, it's like you can talk about this aesthetic, you can talk about this scene, you can talk about this positive aspect. When you know how I view movies and how I judge movies is that when you look at it as a whole and you can sum it up in a few sentences, is that a story I want to watch? Is that a story that I find worth telling? And with this, it was really, I mean, it's all about the Riddler, like saying there's this thing going on in Gotham where people made this deal with Carmine Falcone. So they come out, okay, they made this deal with Carmine. It takes us 2.5 hours to learn the police made a deal with Carmine Falcone. And then the final scene is, and we talk about this a lot. What was the movie that we reviewed where there's some movie we previously reviewed, Josh, where I think you and I disagreed. And it was the same thing. It was where I thought the third act was not sufficiently connected to the previous 2 acts. Like it was just thrown in there to have a third act. Like the whole Riddler's whole thing is to say, and I'm sure you guys will disagree with me on this, and you may throw out some points that I might have not considered before. Yep. But the Riddler's whole thing is like, I want to showcase, you know, how this happened. That there's this deal with Falcone and the police. He also talks about this Edward Elliot thing with Bruce Wayne's dad that chews about 30 minutes of screen time that's completely irrelevant to the plot. That could have just been cut out. And
I'm trying to think of what you're talking about.
And then he's like, he reveals the case. He's like, okay, that's it. I did my piece. I get arrested. But now I want to fucking kill the mayor-elect. Okay, let's go kill the mayor-elect and flood the city. Like what that I mean, a real change. Because by the way, also, I don't feel like any politicians make a real change. And a real change would be killing the mayor, and that would accomplish my goals because reasons. So it
wasn't about killing the mayor. It was about wiping out Gotham. He was trying to destroy Gotham.
His goal was to wipe out corruption. And he felt like the only way to wipe out corruption, Ra's al Ghul does the same thing. And the only way to wipe out corruption is to destroy the city and start something new.
But I feel like that was just kind of tacked on there at the end. I didn't feel like it was sufficiently connected to just the overall idea and the main thing of.
Did we watch the same movie? Because
yeah,
I'm utterly baffled.
Anyway, there's nothing in this film that I like, even as far as aesthetics, and we talk about the many interpretations of Batman. There's nothing that I really view as equivalent to or surpassing any previous attempts. So you look at the Burton, the Nolan. Maybe not the Schumacher. It's better than the Schumacher films.
Way better.
Even the Snyder version of the character. There's nothing in this that really surpasses any of that. Like the score, obviously, I think, the Danny Elfman and the Hans Zimmer scores are massively superior. I think Pattinson, does a good job, but isn't necessarily as on the level as at least Michael Keaton. But he might be better than Christian Bale, to be perfectly honest, because he doesn't sound like he's got throat cancer. But there's nothing that really like made me think, oh, this is what we needed. We really needed a new Batman movie to get this. And but there's positives along the way. It's obviously like, first of all, the cast. We have to talk about the cast. A lot of critics talk about there's no debate anymore. No, there's still a debate because a lot of critics have labeled Pattinson's performance as just emo. He's just an emo Bruce Wayne chilling out in the Wayne Manor. There's no secret that Matt Reeves modeled the character off Kurt Cobain, that he was inspired by. Like they play Something in the Way twice. That was the song that he listened to while writing the script. That he basically had Pattinson grow out his hair to the length it was because he wanted him to look like Kurt Cobain. So he definitely comes off as emo, but he does a good job.
Wasn't emo.
He was grunge.
Completely
anyway,
different aesthetic.
We get what you're saying. We just want to tease you.
There's definitely, I like, of all things, John, we talk about Colin Farrell, obviously, and all that, but of all things, I really like John Turturro just because we've known for a long time that he's a great actor, but then he did Transformers films for like 10 years where he just came off as a complete douchebag. And like, it's nice to be reminded that he's an actual actor. Who can actually
the first time I actually ever got introduced myself to John Turturro is, I hope I'm saying that right, is even before Transformers, I saw him in Rounders, which is a poker movie with Matt Damon. And that's where I really got introduced to him as an actor. And I thought he was, he's really good in that movie. But sorry,
to me, he'll always be Jesus. Just shaking the
woo.
But no, I'm not even a big fan of that movie. It's just he was so iconic. So
if there's positives, the look of Batman is sort of a mixed bag for me. The suit kind of looks cool in parts, but also I just hate the collar. The stupid collar, I think, is one of the worst aesthetic decisions. His nipples. I hate the ears. I think the ears looks like they're not like. It sounds weird to say, but they're not threatening looking like the other ears. Like we could make a list of all the ears, and I don't know. I'm not super sold
I found
on
them more menacing
aesthetics.
than anyway. Sorry.
But overall, in the end, it was just 3 hours long, and I felt like, in the end, did it move me? Was I moved by the story overall, like in the same way as like The Dark Knight or something like that? And that just wasn't there. But it's definitely like entertaining parts along the way. Jeffrey Wright's long been one of my favorite character actors. So to see him as Jim Gordon was really rewarding. Obviously, they talk about the different versions. Fuck the Burton versions when it comes to Gordon. Burton fucked over Gordon hardcore. But Gary Oldman and J.K. Simmons, and now Jeffrey Wright as Gordon has just been, phenomenal. Having seen, Michael Goff, Jeremy Irons, and Michael Caine as Alfred, now Andy Serkis. I mean, some of the stuff is really good, but probably my biggest positive, guys, that you guys have mentioned of the entire movie is the chemistry between Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz is red hot.
Wow.
That's like, where the movie loses me.
I
thought it was so fucking.
I wanted to watch these two.
I was so bored.
So bored.
It. Unless it was about them solving crimes. Any scene with them where they're like doing the will they, won't they kind of thing. I'm like, fucking get on with it. Please.
Well, I'm with you right now. I was like, it was, whoo. My goodness. And like Zoe Kravitz did so well as Selena Kyle. And you can have that debate too. Who's the best Selena Kyle now, or who's the best Catwoman?
I like the ending scene, James. Apparently, you didn't like the ending scene, but we can talk about like the last scene of them. I
like the bit where they're going their separate ways, and he looks back. That was nice and well done. But like, I don't buy their chemistry. I don't buy that they're actually like attracted to each other. And
I'm baffled right now.
I'm baffled
it doesn't work for me at all. So
I mean, that's fair.
But like, I don't care about that. That's not part of the story for me.
I mean, you guys know me, like I'm always looking for like the romantic subplot in stuff. Like I'm a total girl, when it comes to like that. And I was also really sold on, first of all, like another elephant in the room that we haven't addressed is that James is not, talk about me hating on movies. James is not a fan of The Dark Knight Rises. And has given that film a lot of grief over the years. Yeah. And I am a huge fan of The Dark Knight Rises and the way that it completes that story. I talk about the overall story, and can you sum up the overall story in a way that makes me happy? And that the way that ties up the previous two stories. And also, I know a lot of people are really critical of the Batman Catwoman love story in that film, and that it is not believable and that she just comes off as evil. But I love it in that film. I liked Anne
Hathaway in that movie. That was one of the things in that movie I did like.
So that, I mean, that is an aspect of both, like I can buy Bale and Hathaway as well as Pattinson and Kravitz. And I thought that was really solid, but I mean, I'm not hating on the film tremendously. I'm not saying it's like some bad, 5.5 is right on the verge. Like I could go a little bit higher and make it fresh, but for me, like, it's just not quite there for me. Batmobile looked badass for being just a car. It's still a badass car. And
that wasn't just a car. That was a masterpiece of like mechanics. No, seriously. I've been looking into this car. This car is fucking exquisite the way they built the thing.
We were too late for the car. The whole movie vehicle show we did 3 hours.
Right.
I know, but we didn't know about this movie at that time. So this one is like this might crack my top 5. We've talked about like the '89 Batmobile is the most iconic. Mm-hmm. I still love the '60s Batmobile, and like I know everyone else hates it, but I love the Tumbler. But this one, just the way it's constructed. Like the engine's almost free floating in the thing. The entire thing is fucking gutted of anything that isn't necessary. It's got a bunch of gear in it. Like if you actually see inside this machine, they didn't show it much in the movie. But like I've been looking at some like people, they've had it on display in England somewhere, and like some guys showed like all the interior and everything. The bumper is like this reinforced block of just steel, so it can just smash through shit. Which
that was the coolest moment for me, is when it like a tunnel or whatever the things are, like the concrete,
the concrete
cylinder comes in and he just smashes right through it. And it does, like, say what you want, James, it looks kind of like just a car, but that was what was cool for me. It's like
it's supposed to. It's based on
it's not
based on
the
a
Tumbler
60s Challenger.
It's not the Tumbler. It's not the Burton mobile. It does look much more ordinary than that. So when it just smashes
it's completely fabricated, because that entire body is built from, I think it's fiberglass, but
yeah, that's what he was talking about. That's what Ryan's talking about.
Yeah, when it smashes through that cylinder, it's just like, oh shit, this is it's like the Dempster's car.
But like it's like there's like 3 pieces to this car that were actually like pre-built. Like they had to buy to put together. Everything else they fabricated from the ground up. So the entire body is fabricated, the entire chassis is fabricated, all the roll cage is fabricated. He's got like nitrous on it. He's got like this just ginormous engine in it that's sort of normally an engine sits on like a chassis and it's like you have like some body work around it, but if you actually look at the back end of this thing, it's completely free floating. The sections at the back are just fins basically.
Yep.
To hold the tires in place. And
I do love when James gets going, because like when he's really happy about something like this, and he kind of sometimes can be a gearhead like this, like talks about.
I'm not a gearhead. That's the thing. Like that's why this car's so amazing.
When you make a joyful noise like this, James, when you're happy, it makes me happy. So
what I found fascinating, and James, correct me wrong, because you've been looking in this car more than I have, based on the sound design of like the scenes, like especially that chase scene, it sounds like it's a dual need it has its regular engine inside the hood, but then when he needs to need a little extra juice, he uses that back end.
It's rear engine. It's one engine at the back. I don't know what he puts in the front, but it is a entirely rear engine car. Another thing to note, every stunt that they do in this movie, or everything that they do in this movie with this car, is entirely real stunts.
Nice.
Nothing is CG, nothing is replaced, nothing is miniatures. It's all people in this actual car doing it. They had like 6 cars, I think, to do these stunts, and it's just like the craftsmanship on this car is amazing. I absolutely love it. Like you see the interior, it feels like sort of a souped up like interior of a NASCAR car, which like much like this car are based on actual cars. The body's based on actual production cars that you can buy, like a Malibu or like for a long time, like the Ford Taurus was one, and they change up what the body is, but like the interior of those things is just stripped to nothing. The bucket seats, it's basically just like a sheet of metal with like holes cut in it that the guys sit in, and it's got like a headpiece on it, but like it just, I could go on forever about it. It's just like the craftsmanship of this car. It is so cool, so well done.
One of the things, and so kind of switching gears here a little bit, no pun intended. One of the things, so going back to one of the things I really appreciate, and it's kind of been used, it's been used lately in a lot of superhero films, or even just in, if you're doing like a franchise, because Spider-Man pretty much did this with their trilogy. Is so one of the complaints I've been hearing online is that this Batman wasn't doing or acting or has the same principles as Batman should. Like you think of Batman Begins, where he already has these principles on what to do and how to be, that he knows that this bat is just a symbol for hope, or this and this and that. I appreciate this because it's taking you on a journey, a coming of age journey, as you will, of Bruce Wayne figuring out what Batman is. And the fact that this one, they're taking it. I like that they're taking a different, they're taking it in a different direction in a psychology standpoint of Bruce Wayne, how because of his parents' death and because of everything he's been feeling the last 20 years, and when he finally took on the mantle of Batman, he felt like this Batman isn't the billionaire playboy. He's just a guy who's dealt with so much grief that he's angry and doesn't care about anything else other than vengeance at the time. So dealing with looking at it through that lens, where he's just become this recluse kid who's dealing with grief, I kind of like that direction a little bit. It helps you explore that character more, and it helps with that growth as the movie goes on. Now, I love at the ending, after he goes through all this stuff, I love that ending in the movie where the Riddler's kind of henchmen, or his fringe group of people who are helping carry out his last mission, like that guy's Gordon's like, "Who are you?" He goes, "I'm vengeance." That still shot of Batman just looking at, realizing, I can't do, if I'm gonna be this, I can't just be vengeance, because people are gonna use that in my name, sort of thing. Same with the Riddler, like, "Oh, you inspired me because you're going against corruption." It's like that political, psychological aspect that people can take someone's other's good intentions and warp it into something evil.
But more than that, they actually, like, the parallel that they go with between the Riddler and Batman, that like Riddler's sort of building throughout the entire thing, and Batman doesn't clue in until the guy says, "I'm vengeance." There's visual cues that Matt Reeves does so well in this. If you watch very early on, there's very voyeuristic shots of like Riddler watching his first victim. You don't know it's Riddler yet, but watching the boy in the ninja suit like come up and slice the guy, and you think, "Oh my god, he's dead," and it's just the dad. He gets up and he's fine, but then the Riddler comes in and kills him. If you watch later in the film, every time Batman is watching somebody, it's almost the exact same sort of setup.
Yeah.
And I love the visual parallels that he's establishing before we get to that sort of reveal that, you know, they're the same person. They're two sides of the same coin kind of thing. They're both sort of like psychologically messed up and taking two different approaches to the same sort of
ideal,
but even just like they're both trying to root out the corruption of Gotham. It's just that Riddler is willing to be more ruthless and is in a way more successful.
Sort of. Yeah. And I see what you're saying there, but yeah, it's taking the idea of what Batman was trying to do for this town, for the city. And yeah, he warps into something else, which like for me, I felt the breadcrumbs were leading to that. Because in the beginning of a lot of his videos, he's like, you know, it's all about the lies and corruption of the government. And like I said, that's kind of social commentary of what we're going on today in America. And I really like when a movie can do that and tackle that, kind of brings you into that discussion sort of thing, especially in the realm of the film. And even there's little moments that just I appreciate as, you know, an up and coming and wanting to be a filmmaker. And also when you learn more about the filmmaking things of what something can mean. So like, for example, so like, if, you know, for people watching at home, these guys, they're in the film, you know, they've taken film school. James is in the business, which I'm kind of jealous about that. He's
Sort
really
of.
in the business. You are, you regardless, you're working on stuff that's in realm of Hollywood.
I say sort of, but I ended the last show I was on was Jeffrey Wright did the narration for it. So
yeah, see, exactly. So no, but so what one of the things that just, it really loved it. So like after everything collapsed in that Madison Square Garden place, like there's water in it. When Batman takes his flare and then he helps people come out of that, you know, the mayor and the kid and all that stuff. The symbolism I love was that aerial shot of him holding his torch, holding the flare and guiding the people to safety. That symbolism of I am your guiding light and I will take you out of the, I'll walk you through and guide you through the darkness, pretty much like the darkness of Gotham. That sort of symbolistic visuals kind of storytelling is stuff I really gravitate towards, because it just being able to tell a story through visuals instead of just someone regurgitating it to you is something I really drive for. But other thing this thing brought up, and I want to know what you guys think about it. Not a lot of movies do this anymore, and I don't understand why. And the Hunger Games really could have benefited from doing this. And this is what I thought of when it happened. I love in the beginning and kind of throughout the movie, his narration of the story and sort of like the inner narration of what is going on in his thoughts. Like, you know, Bruce Wayne kind of, especially like the beginning. I love that. I love
Obviously, you haven't seen the How It Should Have Ended video on Spider-Man 3. No narrating. Spider-Man, stop narrating. Well, how are people going to know how I've been? Spider-Man, we're not idiots.
Yeah. But I love that kind of thing, because I feel like the Hunger Games really would have done well with that, because it still can work, especially for this movie trying to be more of a modern noir film. And another thing involving like the characters thing is it's a little, like I said, it's little visual stories that I love. Is I remember in the beginning, in the first time I watched him, like, what's the point of him like writing journals or, you know, doing things like that? It's how he's talking about for the past few years, he's been doing nothing but staying up all night, fighting these people. And even like when he sits in the daytime, when like he goes to see Alfred, he's wearing sunglasses because you can see his eyes are all bloodshot. It kind of goes involved. It's more into it more aligns with the story that he's trying to build. And one of the things he does so well is the reason he's making these journals is to kind of keep track of the days, because they blend together. I don't know about you guys, but I worked in the military where you're working at nighttime and kind of sleeping during the day, but you don't get much sleep because it's hard to sleep during the daytime. And so he does this to try to keep track of his days. He talks about how he has to go back and replay everything just because it all kind of just fuses together. And I love that, because this is the first time the movie has actually really tackled that discussion about Batman. I mean, they kind of do in Batman Begins where he's like, oh, bats are nocturnal. But you don't really feel that feeling of what Batman can go through, or Bruce Wayne can go through, of being up literally all day and just having it kind of wear on you after a while. Another thing, did you guys like, and I'm going to shoot this back to you guys. I like
how you phrased that as a question you were going to ask us, but you didn't ask us a question and now you're just moving on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know, right? I kind of trailed off there.
It's okay. It's okay. It just occurred to me, like, wasn't there a question in there? You want us to, Did you guys appreciate the narration is what I'm seeing? Is because like movies like
there wasn't much of it. It was just the beginning and the end.
I find it weird that like they used it so like sparing. Like I'd have to go back and kind of watch and see when they use it and why they use it. But like it kind of disappears after a while and just stops being used.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't if you're going to use a convention like that, like either frame it where it's like with Spider-Man, it's like he narrates the beginning, he narrates the end. He does that on all 3 films.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't work for you, but at least it's sort of like consistent how it's being used.
I like how they use it at the very end to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah.
Especially like that scene of that kind of B-roll shot of him helping that little girl to a National Guard helicopter. Like that moment that lets you sink in where she like grabs his arm, like, please don't leave. Like that's when you realize I need to be more than just vengeance. And like, but using that narration to kind of help you feel that scene really worked for me. You know what I mean?
One of the things going back to what you were saying about Hunger Games, that was something that occurred to me about the movies when I saw them, because it's a very different experience when you're reading the book, because you have Katniss's sort of inner monologue the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with Katniss as a character is that she's a very cold character. Mm-hmm. And without her inner monologue, you miss a lot of sort of the conflict between what she's saying and what she's feeling.
Yep.
And you empathize with her a lot more because of that internal monologue. And I felt like the movies really suffered in the portrayal of her character. Like, don't get me wrong, what's her name did an outstanding job with that character,
Jennifer Lawrence.
But I think you lose a lot of the warmth and the fear, at least in the first 2 films, relating to like how she kind of deals with things, because she's so sort of aloof and cold and not very sort of like honest about her feelings kind of thing, because she's so guarded and protected. So yes, narration can very much be used to kind of like clue in that kind of character stuff. And in the 3rd and 4th film, they start to deal with their PTSD a little bit more as an external sort of thing. So it can be used effectively, but in this, I don't know that I have a feeling one way or the other about it. I just feel it feels weird to me that like as soon as they're sort of done with something, it just goes away entirely and never comes back. And that's, again, going back to my issue with Alfred, who's such an important character in Batman's sort of development and would have been so important to Batman's development in this. Andy Serkis, a powerhouse actor who, you know, can chew the scenery, you can do any basic role that you wanted to, just kind of disappears partway through the film. And I feel like narration kind of does that too, where it like disappears and then comes back at the end. So I don't know if it works for me, but.
And I can see where you come from with that. Because for me, but it made sense for me because, I mean, he was in it up until the explosion. He was in it quite a bit, I feel like, because he was helping Bruce with the detective work and really helping him with the cipher.
That I loved. I absolutely love the fact that he was doing that by himself, not with Bruce, but like he just took that as if it was like the Sunday crossword.
And I can see how some people may hate because like he was kind of the scapegoat, because I knew once I brought up Thomas Wayne, I'm like, ooh, something's gonna happen with Bruce specifically. But you kind of can't have that if he's going to be Batman throughout the whole main character movie. So someone's got to pay for those sins. It ends up being Alfred. And so you can't really do much from the hospital bed afterwards. And after that, pretty much after the hospital bed scene, it really kind of just takes off. And you don't really get time, because you can't really have time. If he was maybe back at the mansion, you can see him, you know, Bruce or Batman, you know, Bruce / Batman come back and ask him for more advice and help. But after that, he's kind of in the hospital. And everything kind of happens so fast. So,
it's a movie you can bring a character back at any point for any reason, kind of like it just, to me, like you have such a big character playing, or a big actor playing such a big character, and he's just gone. And it's like, maybe it's because I feel so attached to that character specifically and his relationship to Bruce and how important he is to his development as a person.
Yep.
That,
and I want to throw it back
especially in this,
to
where I feel like his development was very delayed.
Yeah. I also thought it was kind of cool that in this one, he didn't get taught by Ra's al Ghul. Alfred taught him to fight, which makes me like, damn, Alfred must be a badass. If I see how he fights.
That's been a new thing in the comics, is that like they've gone back and like redone Alfred's sort of backstory. And that was something that they did in the Gotham TV series.
Yeah, and they have a whole TV show called Pennyworth now on Epix, which just shows how far they're willing to dig to make TV shows and stuff. But
like Alfred used to be a spy or like Secret Service kind of thing for like the British military or something, and like he has this whole history of violence, and like he's sort of a pacifist now, but like it's the father figure relationship to me that like is the most important aspect. But I like the fact that he's sort of, and Andy Serkis's interpretation of the character is very much in the same vein of that sort of less the sort of like stuffy grandfather butler type from, you know, the Burton films, and more of a modern interpretation of Alfred.
And I want to kind of throw him back at both of you. I know because I really like it, and I have a feeling James is, but I kind of want to get Ryan's opinion. Hopefully, he goes a little more in depth of his opinion. But one of the things I really enjoyed, and I'm wondering how you guys felt about it, was what he uses, the contact lens he uses to record everything. Like Ryan, as far as it helping him is
that was a little bit over a little bit hard to swallow in terms of technology, in terms of more with, this film's trying to be super grounded. I don't know if I could quite buy that kind of technology in 2022, but sure. Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, compared to all the other technology he uses,
I mean, this is the film where we have to like super ground the Batmobile and super ground everything else. We can go into we should do, and you brought up the idea of doing our next roundtable and just comparing all the aspects of Batman throughout all the different incarnations. Burton, Schumacher, Snyder, Nolan, and Reeves.
Like our best bat suits. Like I thought that'd be fun.
Well, it could be the bat suits, the Bat Cave, the Batmobile, the Alfreds, the Gordons, the everything. I want to talk about even the Bat Cave. I think is really interesting, like how it's been done by certain filmmakers and everything. Because like Burton, Nolan, and Reeves all have like very realistic takes on the Batcave. Like it's just a hole in the ground that he took over. That someone else like it's an abandoned train station. It's an abandoned mine shaft.
I like that aesthetic in this one.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's Schumacher and Snyder are the holdouts in that one. We're like, fuck that! It's a giant thing that would have taken 100 million people to build over. It's a fucking wonder of the world that's built in a thing that opens underneath the lake.
Did you make them sign an NDA? Like, there's no way you and Alfred just did all this.
Yeah,
there's no fucking way.
But no, like I'll tell you. So, like as we kind of move, I mean, James, what did you think of the contacts? I guess
yeah. Well, because did you think it was a useful? Because the reason I liked it so much, because like if you remember Batman Forever, and they're using the Riddler like to solve the riddles, solve the puzzles, whatever they use. It was more like they were talking about it in conversation. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one, they use it as a tool to help use it as research. Use it, you know what I mean? Like, what did you think of that though, James?
I mean, I liked it. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I don't have an issue with it in a world where we're like grounding everything else, because Batman's always sort of had like cutting edge technology,
toys,
and he doesn't really demonstrate that very much. Like the only other gadget that he really has is like the grappling hook and the batarang, which I thought was a cool thing to put in his chest kind of thing. And he uses it more of a knife. Like, I don't think he ever throws it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, the only time we ever see him use is when he's using it to cut something. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't have a problem with that, because again, like he's always like Bruce Wayne himself is supposed to be, a technical genius. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to have like all the resources in the world at his disposal. And like, this is sort of a Bruce Wayne pre-Lucius Fox. So like, he doesn't have as many cool gadgets, but I could see like Wayne Enterprises or something, or some conglomerate of it, having developed this for military tech or spy tech or something, mm-hmm. and him just, using it. I buy that it's a possible technology, so it doesn't bother me. And it's used like for plot purposes. So like, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief about the device for the purpose of like, we need to eyes in this situation and whatnot. So like, it never bothered me. I liked it. I thought it was cool. Okay. I thought it was a great sort of like methodology to kind of bond Selena and Bruce through this sort of like mutual crime, because of course she can get in, he can't. So, this is how like he kind of has eyes on the situation, literally. And like, it's great that it's got like, it's connected to his computer. He can use his computer to do sort of like the detection, like the facial recognition stuff. I don't know. I liked it. I don't have a problem with it.
And Ryan, another part that this I will hold firmly on, and Ryan may roll his eyes at me, but as far as the depiction of Gotham, this is the best. I'm sorry.
Yep, I'm rolling my eyes hardcore. Like, we're gonna compare Anton first.
That feeling of
City.
And this is where I feel like Matt Reeves does his best work, is given that atmosphere of really feeling the corruption, the poverty, the desperation of people, and the feeling of it too, like the
Yeah.
city, that like it just, it looks so run down and ugly. Like in there, like I said, there's parts in every movie, like, you know, Batman Begins, where you see like the, you know, the underbelly kind of the area where the um but see, they always do that where like they separate that, like that area is the bad part, but we have Gotham, the good part of the Gotham City where all the business are, Wall Street. This makes it feel like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can say the same thing about Batman's, you know, Tim Burton's. It has a good aesthetic of feeling that poverty, but it has its own aesthetic look as far as like it still has that whimsy kind of feel to it.
Well, it's very
But
sort of like communist industrialist sort of like over the top arch, sort of like 1930s kind of style in the Burton ones. This one to me felt like an actual city. Like I live in an actual city. It felt like an actual city with, you know, the way crime happens, the neighborhoods that crime happens in, the, you know, there is the upscale sort of rich. There's this sort of like, you know, abandoned buildings and whatnot that, you know, Bruce has turned into his bat cave as opposed to being out, you know, in a cave in the middle of nowhere. The infrastructure is already there. He's just redeveloping it. Same with the Iceberg Club, where it's, you know, it's an old fishing processing company that they've turned into a nightclub.
now I did say that this was the best with Batman in it. I will say the Joker, where the movie Joker, its depiction of Gotham was pretty much like that, kind of spot on like that, where you really felt the poverty and you felt the, I don't know, you saw the how downhill that the city really is.
But
you know what I mean?
The thing I love the most about this depiction of it is that there's been a trend in recent years of the depiction of Gotham being more like Chicago, which for a modern setting is fine. But for a long time, Gotham was based on New York City, on specifically Manhattan. The way that it's an island, you know, sort of subset in, you know, other major metropolitan areas, with like bridges being sort of important to like, and like this one's built on like, you know, the seawall is very important and all that stuff. And if you know your Batman lore, originally Batman was based out of Manhattan, not Gotham City. They changed it to Gotham City further down the line. And to me, like, I've always loved the aspect of Gotham was based on New York, Metropolis was based on Toronto, and both of those have kind of gone away, and I'm very sad and disappointed by that. It brought me no amount of joy to see you go back to that, where there's very clearly the allusions to Madison Square Gardens and to, you know, Times Square, and like there's even little hints of like, you know, British locations too. So I liked the sort of real world interpretations of different cities and bringing those aspects in. And there's still like large swaths of it still feel like Chicago as well, and the way Chicago is sort of laid out.
And a lot had to do also just the people involved in the scenery too of the areas of Gotham. Like it wasn't just one or two people. It was like all the drugs that are used, like a lot of the abandoned buildings, how they're just, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of things there that elements that really added to the aesthetic of the grime of Gotham, the corruption, the crime of it, everything. It just really. Well, Ryan, I know you rolled your eyes. Am I wrong? Like, give me some help here. Like, as far as my explanation,
I mean, yeah,
like,
there's scenes of parts of the city that look dirty and poor. Yay. I mean, it's
not just parts. So that's the thing. It's the whole city.
Yeah, the entire aesthetic is very much like
it's the whole city. This looks it, you know? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it depends on what you're going for. I mean, obviously, like the Burton and Schumacher films were definitely going for a very crazy aesthetic. I mean, the original Batman won the Oscar for production design because it just had these crazy Art Deco looks. It looked like it came out of a comic book, and all these, every single set was something sort of fantastical. And then Schumacher kind of continued that, like it or not, like the Schumacher Gotham City is also very huge and bizarre looking, with giant statues everywhere. And there's a statue on every corner and everything like that.
Right.
And it was Nolan that, you know, just made it look like a city, just like Chicago. And this is the same thing for me. It's just a city. So it's not, doesn't have anything special or crazy about it. I don't know if I want to give too much credit to the production designer for them going onto a street corner and shooting.
But we're not talking about production design specifically. We're talking about how it feels like a city, how it feels like an actual, like Gotham should be, you know, worn down and run down, and like they're you know, you have the upper echelon of like sort of the rich elites and whatnot in like their sort of ivory towers looking down on you know, to me, it's sort of like Coruscant. When you see Coruscant, you know, the big shiny towers on top, but when you get to the lower levels, it's like it's crime. It's
Grimy.
It's grimy. It's lived in. It feels real. It feels like there's history here. There feels like the buildings are abandoned. They're burned down. They're, you know, people are living in shitty tenements. When you go into, you know, Selena's apartment or Riddler's apartment, they feel like actual places as opposed to just bizarre fucking art deco with giant statues holding hammers and sickles and like that. Like,
yeah, I'm not saying that that's any more present than it was in the Nolan films or anything, or in Joker or anything else. I mean, it's just I don't want to go just, you know, go crazy over, you know, like
that's fine
praising them for having, you know, shitty looking apartment buildings. Like it's like it was fine in that aspect.
And so maybe I should elaborate more why I love it so much, because you really feel the reason I just because it goes back to the story, it goes back to the character of Batman, because you really seeing all that, helping see all that and feel all that in the atmosphere, it almost adds more weight and more for me. Like when I saw how Gotham looked, you almost feel that weight and that feel of dread of the purpose Batman's trying to carry out. Like for me, you felt it more like that weight of it's so bad here, and he's fighting the hugest uphill battle a Batman's ever had. You know what I mean? Kind of had, where he's just not just he's dealing with the system, he's dealing with more other crimes, kind of thing. And it really, I don't know, just that. I think that's why I praise it so much, because it really added more to the purpose of why Batman and Bruce Wayne is doing this, more so than I've seen before. Just that you know, and how they deal with all the corruption within the mayor, and you know, all that. You really felt like they did kind of well. They did really well on it too in the Nolan trilogy. I'm not going to deny that, with like the corruption, especially in the Batman Begins. You really did a good job as the corruption between the mob bosses and the government and all that stuff. But it really focused on it a lot here too, and I think it really helped that as well.
That's why Batman Begins has always been one of my favorites, because you go into the lower bellies of the city and it's just like cables just like choking the city, just going everywhere, just because they keep building on top of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it always felt like this sort of like industrialized town that's just sort of like decaying, both from, you know, sort of the corruption of this town and sort of the immorality of the city,
right?
But also just because time takes its toll, and a lot of what Gotham used to be is gone. I think that's one.
Sorry, go ahead.
And this sort of metropolis that, you know, it used to be something to be proud of is now just this seed of corruption.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's the other reason I like this a lot more. I feel like is with the Nolan films, again, I'm not trashing them by any means, but you almost had this feeling of escapism sometimes when he was Bruce Wayne. Like it looked clean. There's certain places he would go in the city that looked cleaner, looked a lot nicer, you know. Whereas
especially in the latter two films, where it felt like a lot of the city was a little more sort of like sanitized.
So yeah, but with this one, it felt so claustrophobic, because literally, no matter where you went in the city, it's all bad. Like the main city, the inner city, the outer parts of the city, it's all just shitty. And I think I will say what really went close to me with that is what really did the animated Batman show really did well with that too, with how they portrayed Gotham and how run down it was, especially like the 90s. I'm talking about the 90s cartoon. Did that really well. That's, you know, but anyway, anything else you guys want to add before? I mean, because I got some negatives I want to bring up. Ryan,
I've got a list of things that I want to go through. First of all, I wrote this one down early on, forgot to come back to it. I don't know why, but people kept telling me that there's an after credit scene.
There isn't.
So I stayed during this entire fucking movie, and all I got at the end was goodbye.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it was an after credit scene.
People kept talking about how there was this like great cameo from a DC character that was going to tie this to the rest of the DC universe, and I'm like, no. Okay, so I got to stay and wait for that. Where was that? That pissed me off.
Someone just fucking with you.
I also
fucking with audience people.
Yeah, I also love that this movie assumes you know this world already. Doesn't spend any time to explain who Bruce Wayne is, who Batman is, what their connection is, what his relationship to Alfred is, what the relationship to his parents are. Really, you know, how his parents died. We don't get any, you know, another depiction of them getting shot in the alley, kind of thing. Like it just assumes that you know Batman, you know enough about this world. We've had this movie like 12 different times now. Let's just go. this is the world we're throwing you in. I love that so much.
Yeah.
I found it one of the things that kind of irked me a little bit about Pattinson's performance was Josh was talking about him sort of like lurching out of the shadows, which was cool visually, but they threw in like a sound cue of like big stompy boots coming through.
See,
and it's
I liked that.
I hated that.
Man, I loved it.
I fucking hated
because
that.
It added to me. It added more to that anticipation and terror, like because it was you'd hear the footprints and it would cut back to the people how scared they were, or I guess or anything.
That goes back to me like what James was saying, like we were taking for granted that you know who Batman is. My thought was, if we know who the fuck Batman is, why fucking bother with this scene in the first place? That was a pointless scene to me. Oh, Batman beats up some useless slugs. Of all this, like, let's cut that out and just get to Batman arriving on the crime scene where the Riddler did his thing. Why do we even need that scene to begin with if we know who Batman is and everything like that? Like,
because I think we need to establish the aesthetic of how this Batman's going to function.
Yeah,
and that is
well, and also, because
the point I was trying to make with this is that I love that this grew from like that first scene irked me because it's like, to me that's not scary. To me that's like that's it's like giving away your lead kind of thing. But like, and my thought was like, the way I kind of refer to it in my brain is he's missing that sort of Batman ninja vanish thing. One of my favorite tropes about Batman is that like he swoops in without you even knowing that he was there, and like he just disappears, and like it's become sort of a joke in the movies where like they'll comment on like, does he always do that? Yeah, so that's what that feels like, and that kind of joke. But I like that they slowly built up to that, and like over time he became less sort of like thunky stompy boots and more sort of like ninja like and more like from the shadows kind of thing, and that was something I appreciated. I know Ryan's gonna tear apart the score, but
I love
to me what I like about the score is that it's not a memorable score. It's not sort of like the bombastic Batman theme. To me, it's a score that works for the movie. It works for the purpose of the tone and the story of this movie. It gives you the sort of
in this version of Batman,
it gives you that sort of dark, brooding sort of like, again, a funeral dirge kind of thing. I don't think every movie score needs to be the big sort of like John Williams theme. Those are great, I love those, but sometimes a movie just needs to have a score that works for the movie and isn't interrupted by da-na-na-na-na, which is great, but in this movie would have made no fucking sense. Like, it just, to me, it wouldn't have worked. So I love the sort of dun 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 dun, that like it, I don't know, there's something visceral and just sort of like haunting about that, and it just worked for me so well. I mentioned Gotham is New York. Oh, fucking Joker. Why do we have to go back to Joker again?
Well, that's the thing, James, is that we're like, I want to actually cover this because like, it's like, yeah, it's like that was how Batman Begins ended, was okay, we did this whole movie and now next is the Joker. But then the next movie was this fucking balls to the wall, amazing high point in the history of cinema. I'm not saying the next Matt Reeves movie is going to be
well,
but
James,
who knows? Maybe the next Matt Reeves movie will be a balls to the wall high point in the in the history of American cinema. Maybe
so
not.
Many other Batman.
Maybe not. I'm with you. I'm kind of with you, James. But I'm also of the minds like we're doing Joker fucking again. Like, this is the same way Batman Begins ended. But at the same time, I'm always of the mind of, but if it turns out to be amazing, who are we to argue with them telling that story?
And that's true. So
it all depends on how the film is.
Surprisingly enough, that's also negative for me too. That's why I was like, when I saw them introduce the Riddler, you don't really see, you just see his silhouette mostly. You get some small details, but you don't really get a ton of what he looks like. But I will say, at the same time, I was like, damn, like
Zodiac, because we never knew who Zodiac was, so we
but
just
for
had
me,
that
it was like
drawing.
Yeah, I was like, oh great, and it's like another Joker, cool, because there's so many villains in his Rogues Gallery that we could really explore. But the reason, and this is probably a fact, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm almost sure Matt Reeves was told to include Batman, or to include the Joker, because
I wouldn't be surprised.
The Joker sells. I mean, the Joker, the movie Joker is the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, and people love him. The casual fans love Joker. They want them some Joker. So the studio's like, ooh, fans love Joker. Let's throw some more Joker. And so the studio's probably like, hey, Matt Reeves, we need you to introduce the Joker too. Okay.
But regardless of how you feel about Batman or anything else, I think the one thing everyone can agree with is that he has, if not the best, the second best rogues gallery in all of comics. He has some of the most iconic characters of all time, and we just keep getting the same fucking characters over and over again. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Two-Face. I love the hell out of this version of Riddler. I enjoy Joker.
Now we need to get Man-Bat. But
one of the characters, like, there's been interviews with Matt Reeves about what character he would do next, and he dropped that he would like to do a grounded, realistic version of Mr. Freeze.
There is no grounded, realistic version of Mr. Freeze.
Go back and watch the Paul Dini episode on that. That is one of the best episodes of television. But like, that is a character that can be done well and like hasn't been given its proper due on film.
But would it work with this hyper realistic Matt Reeves version? That's what I'm saying. Is like, I'm not sure that
I'm willing to give him the shot. I'm willing to see what he can do with the character.
I'm not this. And you can. All I know is we got one scene. It teased the Joker, and we're kind of all on the same page of like, holy shit, the Joker again. But who knows who's to come? Maybe Matt Reeves can make this. Even if he does the Joker again, it might be alongside someone else. He might make Mr. Free. I mean, we don't know.
Like one of the last little bits of dialogue in the film was about how there's now a power vacuum, and they cut to Penguin, who is going to be filling the gap of Falcone and Maroni now that they're gone, and like he's been vying for his spot, so we can finally get Ryan's favorite version of Penguin at least, or or like so many different interpretations of characters that, like, again, I love Scarecrow. Why can't we get Like, as much as I've had Cillian Murphy's version of Scarecrow, he was almost barely in the films.
Right.
He's the only Batman villain to be in 3 films. Is that, like
Joker's been in like 4 or 5
okay,
films.
Fine, Joker had his own film, but like it's
his appearance in like Dark Knight Rises was like one cameo scene that doesn't count as him being like a major villain character. And even in the film that he was a major villain character, he was a secondary villain.
Right.
Like there's or like Hugo Strange, now that we've established Gotham as
Hugo
as
Strange
Arkham.
would be sweet.
Just so many characters in his rogues gallery that would be so
I would love to
see.
I love them to take what Ben Affleck was originally going to do with his Batman and do Deathstroke. That could be a lot of fun. I mean, that could be really well.
I feel like they've overdone that character in recent years a little bit. Unfortunately, we haven't got him on film because that fucking version of Justice League does not exist. But like,
I agree. I don't know how they would do it as far as, because this is a very
between
grounded...
like Arrow and Titans, they've done 2 very good versions of Deathstroke, and like I love Deathstroke, but it's like
I'm going to, when I edit this video, I'm gonna dub over James' voice and say between Arrow and Titans, they've done one very good version.
I like the one in Titans. I thought it was
funny enough, my favorite version, my favorite iteration of Deathstroke wasn't even from Batman shows. It's from Arrow.
Okay, whatever.
That was probably the best
the
Deathstroke I've ever seen.
Animated Teen Titans one.
Have you seen the Titans TV show?
Yes, I have. Yes, okay. I've seen the Titans show. I still like their version of Deathstroke better.
Yeah, me too.
Of an Arrow for me.
No.
Yeah, that's for me. Like, I just don't know how. I agree with you. I would love to see a very grounded Mr. Freeze. I just don't know how you would do it. I don't know, but it would be fun to see. I'm not gonna lie to you, because I mean, when you look at some of his greatest villains, they've all been kind of. I think that's why they do it, because they're his most well known. Like, I don't know if I would want to see, unless they did it well. I don't know if I could do like a Clayface.
Yeah.
Solo has to be in the solo villain. I don't know how they would even do that, and it's too early to do a Jason Todd Red Hood, type of.
Well, maybe the next film will be getting to know Robin and stuff. I'm not like, I mean,
but I mean, like they sort of slightly hinted at the concept of Hush in this film. Hush would be a great villain to do.
Hush would be a great villain.
He'd be a little too similar to Riddler, following up on this one, but a 3rd or 4th film kind of thing, maybe, because of course they're gonna sequelize this to death. I'd almost be okay if this was the only version of this, like the only one in this sort of storyline, but
no, it's Matt Reeves has signed on for 3 movies. He's going to be doing his own trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost, you're almost wondering what they're going to do as far as the next one goes.
But I will say, here's what I will say as far as my closing thoughts is that this was still a bet. Like this film, if you look at, you could actually read the script and read it as a sequel to either Batman Begins, like instead of The Dark Knight, this could be a sequel to Batman Begins easily. Or it could also just be a direct sequel to, I mean, you have to getting rid of Fat Gordon. It could also just be a sequel to the original Batman. Right. And this, in my mind, this is an absolutely 125% superior sequel to Batman than anything that came after. Like in my mind, we've only had 4 good Batman movies: Batman and the Nolan trilogy. And I don't care. I will fight to the death. Batman Returns is a god awful piece of shit.
No, it's an amazing film.
And I will never, better than the first the day one. I die and for eternity I spend in heaven or hell beyond, I will never ever understand how Schumacher, this is a hot take, how Schumacher got shit for camping up the franchise. Batman Returns is a hokier film than Batman and Robin.
No,
it is absolutely hokier film than Batman and Robin.
It is so much.
It is a film with penguins marching on the streets of Gotham and firing rockets. But again, Schumacher camped up the franchise because of fucking nipples. Right? Like, don't get me wrong, Schumacher films are campy, but you're going to tell me Batman Returns is not hokey as hell? Give me a break. That is the hokiest film I've ever seen in my life.
Hey guys, the best film of that era.
Hey guys, what killed the dinosaurs?
The Ice Age. Oh, I can do you one better. Spotlight on Penguin as he addresses Patton like his army of penguins. I know you're frightened, but you. Oh, come on, but by all means, what killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age was what killed it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So my closing thoughts. Unless James, you have anything for our closing thoughts?
Batman Returns is a banger. I'm going to stand by that to my dying day.
You can say it's a banger, just don't say it's not hokey.
I mean, so right now, all of those films were hokey. The first one was hokey.
Then don't say Schumacher camped up the franchise. Like that's
I didn't say he did. You're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying Batman Returns is a damn good film.
James, why don't you go ahead and wrap up your thoughts? What you think of it overall, kind of and also what you're kind of excited for moving forward for this new trilogy, this new world.
I mean, Matt Reeves is creating. Can I gush more about Zodiac and that interpretation of the character? That was fantastic. The whole entire scene of him like waiting for them in the cafe was just
creepy. You haven't touched on that at all, but that was just hour
so well done. Like I love the grounded like detective work again, because again we've like rarely gotten that kind of aspect to his character outside of maybe like the original or the 90s cartoon kind of thing. And like, to me, that's always the most interesting part of Batman is watching him work. Like, you play the Arkham games.
Yep.
Just him going over crime scenes is one of my favorite parts of it. Like, of course, the stealth part where you're like swinging on the gargoyles and knocking guys out. That's hella fun too. But, you know, the Arkham games being like probably like my ideal version of Batman. This is as close as I think we're going to get to those.
So like a detective Batman.
A detective Batman, but also like that sort of like just that darker sort of like realistic version of like how Gotham functions and how tormented he is without it being sort of like goofy as fuck. That the 90s versions were and the 80s versions were. And like just like I'm not going to sit here and shit on Nolan's films and say that they weren't good. They were outstanding films, but like compared to these, they do feel a little like almost lighthearted to me.
Which is weird to say because those are some of the most grounded ones. And like for me, this is not as good as Dark Knight still. Like I rewatched Dark Knight after I saw this the second time. The Dark Knight is still the GOAT. And I think it will forever be the GOAT as far as Batman goes.
I think Dark Knight is a high point in the history of cinema, but I might like the original Burton version better. Like they're both great films. They're both it's kids.
The Dark Knight is a good Joker movie. It's not a good Batman movie.
See, I would disagree there. I feel like it's a good Batman movie too.
No,
go ahead.
Because Batman's almost Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that where he's like he's almost irrelevant to the actual story because everything else just sort of happens around him. I mean, that's not true, but like it's
coming up next, folk, our running commentary of all the Batman films.
It is a Joker Harvey Dent film without question in my mind. Whereas this to me is a Batman film. Even though Riddler plays a huge part in it, it's still about Batman. It's about the dichotomy of Batman and Riddler. There's sort of similar sort of ethos and the relationship that they've kind of built throughout this. And like you said, like there's allusions to Seven, there's allusions to Saw, there's allusions to like actual real life crimes. And just like the way they brought all that together. I loved the depiction of the city. I loved the most of the character stuff. I know everyone's praising Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, but it didn't do anything for me. One of the like standout sort of like I don't give a shit kind of, which is really depressing because like I love Catwoman and Selena Kyle. Again, Batman Returns, Michelle Pfeiffer was an outstanding Selena Kyle. I'll go to my death on this. I'll die on this hill. So, but like this movie just worked for me in all kinds of ways that the Nolan films didn't.
Like I said,
the Burton films didn't. The Schumacher films didn't. The only film I think that might surpass this in terms of my personal enjoyment, and you guys will groan, but the 67 movie, because 66? It is so. No, the movie came out after. I think it was 68 actually. The series was 68, but the movie was like 67.
The Adam West movie, yeah.
Adam West Batman.
But it leans so much into its camp and so much into it just being.
I'm not gonna lie. That's a comedic masterpiece. That's a masterpiece of the film.
It's like people hate that film, but that is honestly, Batman aside, watch that movie. Is one of the funniest fucking movies I've ever seen. It is
so days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yes, brilliant comedy. The fucking punching of the rubber shark. They know it's terrible, but they're doing it anyway.
Oh god, that rubber shark was oh my god, that's something. That was so funny.
Hand me down the shark repellent spray. Yes,
and the entire like dehydration sequence is just so absurd. Where they're just positive. Like I could praise that movie all day long. That might be my favorite Batman movie, but
I might do a top 10 for me personally for the channel of what, or not even the top 10, like ranking all the live action Batmans from worst to best. But I might just do theatrical, include some of the animated, because there's some animated ones that you can't deny.
Mask of the Phantasm counts as theatrical because it was actually released.
It was a theatrical movie, so you got to count Mask of the Phantasm.
And people, I've heard people praise Lego Batman as like the definitive version of Batman for them, and I'm like,
okay,
but sure. But this one to me is like as good as Batman is ever going to get in my mind. I would like to be proven wrong in sequels that I would shine this one, but to me, this one blows the Nolan films out of the water. Like it's not even close how good this movie is compared to, like, don't get me wrong, love those movies. This is light years ahead of it.
Wow. Yeah, see, I'm kind of in the mixed bag because I'm still debating on, if this one's better than Batman Begins. I feel like I'm leaning more towards yes, but for me, it's still
I like Batman Begins more personally. But this one to me is the better movie.
Yeah. But to me, the Dark Knight movie always, to me, it's the GOAT as far as the Batman wars go. And that's fine that people just, if you disagree, James, it's totally cool.
I'm in the minority. Most people think
that's
Dark
fine.
Knight is better. So,
but I love this movie, and there's so much we didn't tackle that I wish we could talk about. We don't want to have.
I think our runtime right now is about as long as the movie itself. So.
Right, exactly. So I don't want to take up too much because there's probably a lot of editing for Ryan. But there was just so much. Well, there's so much done on the director's standpoint that I praise so much on a filmmaking standpoint that I praise so much, and aesthetically it just works. I like different aesthetics. There's so many different aesthetics I like but as long as it goes well with the movie's trying to do and trying to say, and the message that's trying to convey as far as the world, story, the characters, it all works together and so cohesively well that you can't praise it enough. And there's so many more things, like I said, you can really tackle that. I will say the reason I think I appreciate this Batman quite a bit, and the reason I love this Batman movie so much, is they took a huge swing, and a very unconventional huge swing on the mythos and what Batman really is, how he does things, how he handles situations. Just like walking up to fucking Falcone's club, like, you know who I am? Yeah, you're gonna let me in. I want to talk to Falcone. Like normal Batman would do that. He'd find you on the street, tie you up like Batman Begins, and where are the drugs coming from?
But they did that iteration later in the movie where he goes back to the club, and rather than just knock on the door and beat the shit out of them, he does the like full Batman thing where it's like, wait, there's nobody here, and all of a sudden the guys just get like flung out a shot kind of thing.
And that's what I mean by huge swings, because like he doesn't, like when he walks towards his, in the beginning when he walks towards the bad guys, or even when he's canvassing the streets, he's not in the bat suit the whole time. He is literally just in a jacket and a hoodie and just walking around until he has to suit up with his backpack. It's very unconventional. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a big swing that Matt Reeves did on this particular Batman that's so unconventional from what we know of Batman, and even his ideology in the beginning. But you start seeing him on this journey of what he knows he has to be. And like I said, there's and I think what this movie also did well is kind of like I said, I'm wrapping up my thoughts, is the relationship between him and the PD. Like, this is the first time I really felt like, because a lot of times you always felt like it was just him and Gordon, and a lot of and he would always tell the other cops to kind of shoo away. But when they're at the crime scenes, like, he is literally working with these cops more than I've ever seen a cop, more Batman movie do. It's very interesting to see it happen. And I think the closest they get to that is in the 90s animated Batman, where they kind of handle it in the same vein as that, which is, it's very surprising. It's very nice to see, because there's no, vigilante task force. They're just like, it's almost like the cops realize how bad it is that they're so desperate. Even though they despise him and think he's a freak, they're all like, they're working with him, kind of thing.
Well, that was the great moment when they were arresting Falcone, and Falcone's all like, I own the police force, and they open the doors and all the cops are standing there.
Not all of us. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
So, and like, that was, that just, oh.
So, and it worked really well on so many other boards of the spectrum, but the story and the characters, the how he goes about telling it, and the style he does is very much in the vein of War of the Planet of the Apes. That's probably the reason why I praise it so much. But then again, I didn't like how they kind of were throwing in the Joker at the end. I wasn't really a big fan of that. I did feel like there was parts that could cut to. There was a little more fat on it than I would have needed, especially in the second act. But the third act just flies by so fast. But I will say, there was never, even though it was 3 hours long, there was never a moment where I was checking my watch or wondering like, oh man, when am I going to get to this? When we get to this, because you're so sucked into the story. And that's what really gravitates towards. We will see what he does next, but this movie's great. I'm probably end up seeing it again, just, because I do enjoy seeing this movie. Like, I enjoy watching it for the story, for the noir feel and aesthetic of it. That, it's, I don't know. To me, it's probably, it's going to take time, because you can't be hyperbolic because it's brand new and out. At least I can't. I need time.
We'll see how you feel in 5 years, Josh.
Exactly. You'll see how I feel in 5 years.
Mr. The Force Awakens is better than the original Star Wars. We'll see how you feel in 5 years.
I know. And I almost feel like but I also feel like this is a little different than that, because I was so hyped up on that just because it's Star Wars. Whereas this really, the suction, what really sucks this into me is that this is unlike any Batman movie we've really seen, though. This is so different than we've ever seen. And that's what really, I'm gravitated towards it, as far as how they handle the villain, the story, the characters, and, just kind of all of it. So we'll see in 5 years if I feel the same, because I remember a long time ago, I was like, oh, Force Awakens is like the second best Star Wars movie ever. Now I'm like, I'd rather watch the prequels than any of them movies, because I love the prequels. I don't care what anybody says. I love the prequels.
Okay, so James, you're
anyway.
Do we already do James, or yeah?
But anyway, we'll see how I feel in 5 years, and we'll kind of, but keep a lookout, guys. We might do another roundtable discussion. I think it'd be fun to do what our favorite bat suits are, because this one's really one you can really sink your teeth into.
I don't want to say like we're not going to be able to spend an hour on bat suits, because we can spend an hour talking about like the color red. I think but like I think
I don't think I've got enough to say on the bat suits. Batmobiles, maybe, but
like I said, doing like all the different things that have been different in all the incarnations: the bat suits, the Batcave, the Batmobile, the Bruce Waynes, the Alfreds.
Yeah,
the
but I also don't want to get into this argument again with you about which iteration is better, and it's
but those are fun.
Well,
for you, the viewer of us arguing, sure, but it boils my blood sometimes.
I get popcorn. I'm just like, but that'll do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the discussion we had here on the Batman. But what did you think of the movie? Leave your comment section below. Give us some of the details that you like, some of the, the favorite moments. You can go spoiler heavy. Doesn't matter. Jump in the comments and let us know your thoughts. Also, guys, if you like what you watched, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you can receive all of our great content we have coming for you here in 2022. That'll do it for today again. I am Josh Williams.
I'm Ryan Murphy.
I'm James Sheridan.
And thank
You
you
were
for keeping
expecting me
it
to
real.
say vengeance, weren't you? No.
Thank you for keeping it real.
With real time.
Good night.